Are you feeling stuck in a dead-end relationship? Do you want more in your romantic life, but are afraid to let go of what you have? In my work with individuals and couples, I've found that many people can't decide if it's best to leave a romantic relationship or stay in it for the long haul. It's no easy matter. And the truth is, no one can tell you what path you should take. The decision, as hard as it might be, is ultimately up to you. Today, I'm joined by an international relationship coach who will help us dive deep into knowing when you might want to commit fully or when you might want to let go. Today, we'll focus on this listener's real life question. I'm confused about my marriage. I've been with my wife for 8 years, married for 4, but we're having a boring friendship kind of love. I keep fantasizing about dating. I want fun and passion again. I've been flirting with someone at work and it's on the verge of something more. I don't know if to get a divorce or if to try to make it work. And with that issue as the focus of today's episode, I'm Dr. Carla Marie Manley, and this is Imperfect Love. Please note, as this episode contains sensitive information, listener discretion is advised. If you need support, please see the special links in the show notes.
Welcome to Imperfect Love with Dr. Carla Marie Manley, psychologist, author, and relationship expert. I'm here to help unravel mysteries and misconceptions about love, relationships, and mental health issues, plus everything in between. Love is complicated, people are not perfect, and relationships surely can be tough. Together, we'll navigate this messy, imperfect space of real life.
Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Ken Blackman, who will be sharing his expertise on relationships, intimacy, and the No Regrets program for couples. Welcome to the podcast, Ken. It's such a pleasure to have you with us today.
It's such a pleasure to be here, and that question gives me so many different thoughts.
I'm excited to dive into it with you. But before we do that, can you tell our listeners just a little bit about what makes you you?
Mm, that's a rich question. Um, First of all, I'll just say I think that our identities is something that we wear like a garment. So to say what really, really makes me is the inner self that is the witness and the experiencer. But, I've through my life acquired an identity which these days looks like someone who has been doing relationship coaching for, I'm in my 25th year now, believe it or not, and who believes deeply in the power of connection as a nutrient that all of us are hungry for and as the basis of the best relationships. So I think that's a good starting point for the
Oh,
iceberg of
I
who
think
I might be.
I think that's a very beautiful starting point. And I appreciate the piece where you said that you're a witness because listeners, for those of you who might not be familiar with that idea, I'll give you my perspective and then Ken, I'll ask yours. But I find that sometimes being the witness is both the best part of life because it allows us to be objective about ourselves and what's happening in our lives. And sometimes it's the most difficult part to step out of the self, out of our wants and our needs and our yearnings and our hurts and our wounds, and be able, so it's really a wonderful place to be, but also a very difficult place to get to sometimes. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, it's something that um, experienced meditators talk about, where they talk about this idea that you are not your thoughts. And it is so easy to identify with our thoughts. Like, how could that not be me? I'm the one who's thinking these thoughts. And yet, if you spend some time meditating, what you start to discover is that all these thoughts are coming in. You didn't create them, you didn't choose them. They're just flowing in your mind. And so I think all those thoughts are kind of like a delegated task. You know, I have this committee that sends me a bunch of thoughts. I have a committee that evaluates and judges everything and tells me what my emotions are and my feelings and my opinions about it. I have a delegated, outsourced committee that is perceiving the world and using my five senses. And then there's me at the center that isn't any of those things, that is simply experiencing the world. And it is so hard to get to that place. And yet, if you can get to that place, you discover that you're separate from all of that. And there's something very liberating about it. And then you can jump back in and love the things you love and hate the things you hate and be invested in everything and be super passionate. But if you know how to get to that place that is just the neutral experiencer of everything that's happening, it's a very powerful place to be able to have access to when you need it.
Absolutely, Ken. I am there with you on that. Among other things, I'm a meditation leader, and I can tell you, listeners, I agree with Ken. If we can get into that space, if you're not used to meditating, or if what Ken is saying sounds very unfamiliar, just imagine for a moment sitting, on a park bench or at the seashore and seeing if the thought that is troubling you, instead of attaching to it, holding on to it, imagine if you can just let it float by like a cloud in the sky. And that is one of the biggest arts of meditation, is letting those thoughts, we want to grab onto them, we want to tease them apart. But if we can learn to let them float by just as we would a cloud in the sky, that is definitely, so I'm with you. That allows us to become that witness, because we just witness the cloud going by. We don't try and chase it or hold on to it or push it away. We just let it move on. So I love this as a beginning, to the topic of today, because it sounds like the listener is having all of these thoughts about being married to this individual, and it's a boring friendship, not a passionate love relationship. And so it sounds as if this person is feeling a bit stuck or cramped, and they're longing for passion, and they're longing for something more, and a friendship isn't
Mhm.
enough. And I'm not judging it, but I'm just saying, if we back up and just watch all the thoughts that must be in this person's mind, all of these thoughts, and
Mhm.
they're big thoughts, and they are leading this person to take action. And the person is taking action by flirting with somebody at work, and then the flirting is on it's on that precipice. It sounds as if, hey, it's just about ready to move to something else. I don't know what that is. If it's a deeper emotional affair, it sounds like it might be that. It might move into a full-fledged physical affair, but then they're saying, hey, should I stay or should I go? Should I get a divorce, or do I, try to make this work?
Right.
So, with that as the foundation of and you as a relationship coach, and me as, Dr. Carla, right? Relationship person, anxiety person, all of those hats I wear, I can say this isn't the first time I've heard this story. It is an
Mhm.
age-old human story. We humans, we are imperfect, and our thoughts surely and our feelings can surely sometimes lead the way. So, what do you have to say about this particular question?
Yeah, first of all, um, there is no way that I can tell you what to do, obviously. Even when I'm working with people there may be two, three, five people who are describing the exact same thing, and there still needs to be a lot of depth and inquiry and discussion before they know what's right for them. So I want to start by saying that. That said, there's a few things that I can maybe suggest or just even talk about what the process would be to come to an answer about this. So let me start there. First of all, I said this in the beginning, but I believe that um, in the short run, relationships, we have our list of things we want, we have our list of qualities that we're looking for, especially when we're dating. We have these hard no's and all these lists of here's the things that are true about me and all these lists. And I think that all of those lists are really just our best guess as to what's going to give us the experience with deep connection with another human being. That's actually the goal. And all of these lists of, these qualities or these things are just our best guesses to how to have that experience with another human being. Um, and I also believe that, you know, I always come back to what are the concrete experiences that you want to have. So when I was growing up, way back in the 1970s, there was this song. It was called the Pina Colada song. That wasn't the actual name of it, but basically it was this story about this guy who's unhappy in his relationship. So he puts an ad in the want ads, which used to be a thing that you could do. It was actually an ad in the newspaper. And he said, if you like pina coladas, if you like getting caught in the rain, he made this list of experiences, like experiences that he wanted to have. And I think that's actually the best approach is, good for you, the listener who submitted this question, for having something that awakened you to something more that you want to be experiencing. And I take it that your question is, can I have something more with my wife of all these years where we've gotten into this rut? And I had this experience that woke me up to actually I want more than what we're having. And so now you're in this quandary. And to return to this song, what happened? He put that ad in the paper. It was this list of experiences. Do you like making love at midnight? Do you like all these really wonderful experiences? And then he got a reply and he was like, great, somebody wants to have these experiences. So he meets this other person who responded to his ad, and it's his girlfriend. It's the woman that he's been with the whole time who who says, I never knew you wanted these kinds of experiences. So that might be a good place to start is to say to your wife, I want to experience more and I would like to experience more with you. Is that something you're interested in? Is that something you want to experience? I want to wake up in the morning snuggling. I want to have delicious, slow, lovemaking with you. I want to experience life with you. I want to stand on the beach and watch the sunset. There's all these experiences that we're just not having anymore. So that would be a good place to start. I'll pause there. I have more thoughts, but I want to pause and just see what thoughts you have about what I've said so far.
I think that that's a really beautiful approach. And it's interesting that you're talking about lists because I think many times when our thoughts, as pesky as they are, and even when we're trying to let them float by, sometimes we do want to take those thoughts and put them down on paper and
Mm,
say, these are the
yeah.
experiences I want. And I'm with you. Sometimes I often hear one one partner saying, it's usually one partner saying, I'm not getting the amount of sexual connection I want. I'm not getting that. I'm not getting the adventure I want. I'm not getting the fun I want. Our lives have become humdrum and dull. They're all about the kids, or they're all about the work, or they're all about whatever it is. And so if we slow it down, in my third book, Date Smart, I talk about the importance of creating these lists and
Mm,
not just what we want, which can include these experiences, but what we have to offer. Because
Mm,
often if we get stuck on I want, I want, I want, we forget some of those are concepts that we may not really want in real life, or maybe they're things, they're more dreams than actualities. But also sometimes we don't slow down to think, well, but this is what I have to offer. I have to offer a warm heart. I have to offer an adventurous spirit. I have to offer the interest in going to different classes or in learning, but whatever it might be. So when we slow it down, as you're saying, to
mhm,
create lists, and we want to be careful because often people get stuck in lists that are all about physicality. I want somebody who has brown eyes and brown hair and they're this tall, and that becomes the list, and they're this fit and they make this much money. But we need so much more than that. As
mhm,
you're saying, we want someone who wants to share experiences because those are a huge part of life. The
mhm,
experience of raising kids, of having a dog, of gardening together, of, you know, having sexual intimacy, traversing, trails together through life, whatever it is. So I agree with you. If we start with these lists, not only, and we do an internal inventory of what we have to offer and also what we're asking the other person, we can
mhm,
learn not just an awful lot about what that person might bring us, like in your song. That person is bringing a lot of the experiences that this individual wanted that were right there. Right there, they just had never explored it. So I'm a big believer. So kudos to you. I love point
mhm,
number one, create the lists. And I have a feeling that what you're asking us to look at today, Ken, is not should I stay or should I go? But before we even get there, let's do some self reflection. Let's do some
mhm.
evaluation so that when we
Yeah.
get to that choice, we feel as though we've made a wise choice rather than one that's ruled by a passion. That I'm not saying passion's bad, but let's say this guy says tomorrow, I'm going to divorce my wife. I'm going to go and leave for this person in the office. And once they get to know the person, it's like, oh, that
Yeah.
was, you know, just, an
Very
illusion.
short-lived.
Yes, very short-lived because that person underneath is not at all who I thought they were. And that happens so frequently. So continue, please.
Yeah. You bring up such a good point because this has to be co-created. Like, unlike like if you live your life alone, the world is your oyster. You can have all kinds of experiences. There's so much you can do, there's so much you can experience. And then there's this piece around uh, co-experiencing with another human being, having connection with another human being. And that's the one thing that you need another human being in order to have that experience. And so relationships have to be co-created. So as you say, as an invitation, not a demand, like I want this and this and this and this, but as an invitation, this is what sounds like a wonderful life and a wonderful relationship and a wonderful experience to me. I want to hear what sounds wonderful to you. Like what would be delicious for you? What is it that you want to be experiencing that we're not experiencing? And that's such an important question that this has to be co-created. It's not like a tug of war here. Two people putting their heads together to create a vision and a life that's better than either one of them could come up with by themselves. And often in a relationship that's kind of reached a point of neutrality or friendship, or like the spark is gone and they're just kind of going through the motions. They're polite and they're friendly with each other, but something is missing. Often the reason that that has happened is that someone had an issue and they didn't get it resolved and they kind of shut down. So, one of the questions I would ask is, how did we get to this place? Do you remember the place where you just kind of gave up or shut down? what issue was so important to you? I really want to know what issue was so important to you that we never got all the way through, that we never resolved, and that you just gave up. Whatever that is, I want to resolve it. And what I find in my practice is that sometimes there's been something for years, and you go back and you go back, and then if you can actually resolve that thing, all of a sudden things light up. You're turned on to the person again. And so I think usually when a couple has gotten to that place, it's not boredom. It's that there was a moment when something didn't get resolved, or someone, like they were fighting about someone and someone just said, you know what, this is too much work. This person's never going to hear me. They're never going to listen to me. They don't care about what I care about. They're not paying attention. And they just give up. But a part of them closes down and shuts down. And then they're polite with each other. They're friendly with each other. But the spark is gone. So
I'm with
I
you.
would look to that too.
Okay, so let's take a pause. You actually have three things that I want to just get a little bit granular on. First is the idea when you're talking about co-creating relationships. I am such a fan of that. And it's actually my fourth book, The Joy of Imperfect Love. I talk about the importance of co-creating mindfully because our relationships, any relationship we're in, is ultimately co-created. There's another person, there's a back and forth. Are we doing it by default, or are passive selves coming out, or our difficult parts coming out? But we're creating agreements the whole way through life, implicitly or explicitly. Who does the laundry? Who gets angry? Who shuts down? What's happening? So when we slow it down, as you're saying, and do a mindful co-creation, and it's never too late to do that, to really say, this is the kind of relationship I want. I want loving. I want kindness. So can we work together? If you want love and kindness, can we work together to create more patterns that are loving and kind? So I love that you brought that up, the co-creation, because if we're going to co-create a relationship, let's co-create it mindfully. Even if we're in the thick of things already, we can shift gears and become more mindful. Second thing that you were talking about that I also really appreciate was that when we're looking at a relationship and we are stuck, or it's now just, air quotes, just a friendship, I agree that sometimes that's created by resentments, which will be point three. But I also think that sometimes that friendship, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it's because people just stop putting in the effort they did when they were dating. So they may be more like best friends. It's not that that's bad, but they've lost the oomph. They've lost some of the raciness and the passion and the date nights. So I think sometimes it's that where there truly aren't any resentments, which we'll get to in a sec, but that it's more that it's gotten to this groove and this, path of least resistance where we're not trying. And I hear it from couples all the time. If he could only treat me the way he treated me when we were dating. I don't know where that guy get went. Or, sometimes and it can be any gender. It's not, you know, one or the other. It's not cisgender. But, one partner is saying, oh, but my lover used to dress up and put on these, lingerie or play with this and do that. And now they just don't even bother. That's something that can be addressed. It's something that often people get tired and they just decide not to invest in sexual energy anymore or in the little niceties, whatever that looks like. Then your other piece, which I really appreciate, the piece about unresolved issues that can fracture any relationship, romantic, friendship, family, that absolutely going back to your words about becoming the witness. Go back if you think that this is something that you're carrying resentments or your partner is. Go back and without judgment, find that space as the witness, as the observer, where Were there times where your partner let you down or you let your partner down and it was too much work or too scary to resolve the issue? So you put it in what I call the backpack. We keep throwing them in the backpack of the relationship, and then the backpack gets heavier and heavier and heavier. And all of a sudden, we just want to throw the backpack off. We don't want that relationship anymore. Whereas sometimes, if we put that backpack down for a bit and do the effort to clean out all those rocks and pebbles, all those resentments, that we can really, as you said, all of a sudden it creates the spark of, I like you again. I love you again. Oh, now you're sexy and you're fun because I don't have all of this field of resentment between us. So I love that idea that you brought up about clearing things out because it's absolutely vital for any healthy, truly connected relationship. And there's an art to that. There really is. And a practice, an
For sure.
ongoing practice of keeping that backpack clean. So you are giving us such great information. Let's
Wonderful.
continue.
And I'm so glad that we're on the same page on so many of these things. It's wonderful.
It is kindred spirits. I can tell you, you are obviously a very gifted relationship coach
Mm.
because
Thank you.
some
Welcome.
people are of the mind, ah, let's just throw the relationship off and move on. It's not working. But often, not always, especially if a relationship is truly unhealthy. If one partner is, and I don't think what you or I are talking about that. If there's a partner where there's abuse, constant gaslighting, all of these, emotional abuse, physical abuse, financial abuse, spiritual abuse, any of these types of abuse,
Yeah.
often you actually have to take a huge step away from the relationship, a separation
Mhm.
at least, in order for that relationship to have any chance of healing. Because trying to
Mhm.
heal within the confines of an abusive relationship, you get one breath of fresh air and then, the whack-a-mole comes down and you're hit underwater again.
Yeah. And often on that note, often someone has personality adaptations, that they're not going to change. And that is something to be aware of that sometimes, like, you'd be surprised how often that accusation is made when it isn't actually true. But sometimes it is true. This person is simply not going to change. They've got diagnosable disorders. Maybe they haven't been to a therapist, but they have a diagnosable disorder that isn't isn't going to change. And if they come to coaching, it will show up because you can see that they're not coachable. Like the conversation, they cannot change. And so that's something to be aware of too. But I want to emphasize that is the exception. That's not typical.
High five.
That's not the
High five. There we go.
yeah.
Listeners, what Ken just said is so important because there are some mental health disorders that are very intractable, very intractable. One is NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. It is, very resistant to change, but it doesn't mean that if that person has a light bulb go on in their mind and they want to change, that is the governing factor. In some of
Mhm.
those more intractable personality disorders, if somebody somehow gets that light on in their brains, in their hearts, and they say, I want, or in their minds and their hearts, and they say, I want to change, I can see this. Unfortunately, sometimes the very nature of those particular disorders is that that light doesn't go on because they are otherwise engaged, sometimes in self-absorption or whatever it is. But anyway, so I agree with that. Yet there are many instances where someone does want to evolve into being a better person.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key. When you have someone who says, and I say that all the time, life changes us. People are always saying, I shouldn't have to change in my relationship. I shouldn't make my partner change. They shouldn't make me change. My response is, we change in life one way or another. Are we going to let life change us by default? or if somebody's asking us to create a change that makes us a better, kinder, more wonderful human being, why not? Why wouldn't we want to evolve mindfully in a way that allows more parts, more loving parts of the self to show up? Sure, it's hard work, but in my mind, it's some of the best, most challenging, and most fun, some of the funnest work that we will ever do if we have the right mindset.
I'll say that on a personal note, I've learned so much from my wife on this topic because she's studied personality adaptation. She's worked alongside experts who work with people who struggle with this. And in an earlier life, she herself suffered and struggled with narcissistic personality disorder herself. And she is now a loving, compassionate, empathetic human being who I adore and who I've never had as good a relationship. But it was her choice to make that change. And one of the things that I've heard again and again and again is the reason why narcissistic personality disorder is so hard to treat is because they don't think that there's anything wrong. They like the way they are.
Mhm.
They're happy with the way that they are. They have no desire to change. So first and foremost, someone who has that has to want to be different. And they have to do the work of going to therapy to actually make change within themselves, and then it's hard work. But the biggest barrier is they have no desire to be any different than the way that they are. That is the biggest thing that makes NPD difficult to treat.
Absolutely. And listeners, if you've heard some of my other podcasts, you'll hear me say this about NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. When we look at the myth, which leads us to the term narcissist, it was in ancient mythology where Narcissus was looking in the pool of water and became so entranced with his own image that he didn't care that there was a nymph who loved him or this man who loved him. He only cared about the beauty of his own reflection in his own world, and he ultimately died because he withered away to nothing from only caring about the image in the pool, his own reflection. And when we look at that, that is exactly what Ken is saying, that NPD, they're in their own world, mesmerized by all of the control and all of the, just thinking about the self and the self-absorption. The, the other people around them, they're just part of the external, nothing that they have to really tend to or care about because their primary focus is that image, that self-reflection. Very lonely way to live. But you're right. So I don't want to spend too much time on NPD, but there you have that piece. So I join with you on that. It is one of the most, and this gets right to the listener's question again, that if there is a mutual desire, mutual being the operative word, to shift a relationship, then there's great potential, I find. But if there's one person, whether it's a person with NPD or alcoholism, or they simply don't want the relationship anymore, that's going to be a really difficult uphill battle. Very, very difficult. But if you have two people who want to create something bigger, more passionate, more adventurous, more luscious, whatever that might be, oh my goodness, the sky's the limit.
Mhm. So I'm so glad we're talking about this because this is going to be the focus of my work moving forward in the coming year and probably in the years after that. My I've been doing this kind of work full time for 25 years. And for the first decade or so, 10, 15 years, my primary focus was what happens in the bedroom. How can people have a fantastic gourmet sex life? And then the second decade or so has been focused on how to have a great relationship, how to have a really healthy, long lasting, fulfilling, resilient relationship that's built from the uniqueness of the two people that are doing this. But mostly I've been working with couples who are already committed, right? They're not in that questioning the relationship state. They're committed. They know that they want this to work. They may have big problems, but what's nice about that is that I can tell them this is the difficult work that you're going to need to do in order to get into the promised land of the, here's the barbed wire that's in the way of you getting into the garden. And because they have skin in the game, because they want this relationship to work, they will do that difficult work to make the relationship great. That said, moving forward, I'm focusing on couples who maybe have been together for 1 to 5 years and they haven't really committed yet. Maybe one of them is ambivalent, maybe one of them is like not sure if this is the right person, or they're not sure if they're ready to commit to one person, or like, are these problems that we have in the relationship red flags or totally resolvable? Or how do I know that I'm going to be in love with this person 10, 20 years from now? Or, all any of those types of questions that are keeping one person, maybe both of them, maybe just one person, from being able to say, I'm fully in. That is the focus of my work going forward, and I'm super excited about it. And there's lots of different approaches. Some people do well with a spreadsheet of pros and cons. Some people just need a really deep conversation that's just exploratory until their light bulb goes off. Some people need help knowing what it is that they're feeling. Some people need some expertise on looking at the relationship and saying, here's what you guys would need to change. Here's the work you would need to do. So there's a lot of different versions of this one issue, but that's going to be my focus moving forward.
It's a tremendous focus because it sounds as if not only do you not have a one size fits all approach, like you said, some clients do great with a spreadsheet. Some do great with pro-con lists. Some do great with free association journaling. Some do great with a combination of all of them. Some want a self-help book to use as a companion. Whatever it is, some want to meet with a therapist and do it in a
Mhm.
therapy room where there's heart to heart to heart, and they can do role plays and work on it in real time. And some want to do coaching with big room full of people who are all in the same boat, and or
Mhm.
do retreats, and that's absolutely fabulous. What I hear you saying, if we take it back to our listener's question, that what you're saying is perhaps do some inner work. Take from these various areas, do some spreadsheets of pros and cons, do some self reflection, do some meditation, go see a therapist, do some work so that you're resolving whatever it is. And certainly bringing the partner into the conversation. I would imagine, I mean, that's what I would want to do. I would want this individual to speak with the partner. If they were my solo client, I'd be saying, have you talked to your partner about this? Have you given them an opportunity? Maybe they're hungering, going back to your pina colada song, maybe they're hungering for exactly what you are. We
Mhm.
don't know this until we have conversations. So maybe you need a relationship therapist to help you with that. Maybe you need I remember a couple I worked with, they created coffee date Sundays and they both like donuts. So they started having conversations every Sunday morning. They'd get donuts, they'd sit down and they'd have conversations only about their relationship. And then they started reading a relationship book together. And then they started doing some of the relationship exercise exercises that were in the book. And they're still married. I'm not saying it's all rainbows and sunshines, but that is a one way to do it. But I think to throw everything away, I'm not telling this listener what to do, but I am saying that sometimes if you don't resolve your issues in a relationship, they do have a tendency of popping up in the next relationship.
Hmm.
What do
Very
you
well
think
said.
about that?
I agree with everything you said, and I love the idea of having a coffee date where we're going to talk about the relationship and we're going to share our likes and dislikes and what we want next, and we're going to read a book together on some possibilities. I love that idea.
And I think it's such a foreign concept to people. And my platform, I look and I said, look how much we invest in work, how much we invest in our gardens or our bicycles or our hobbies, whatever they are. If we looked at a relationship and put it up on a pedestal of importance that's at least equal to work, we wouldn't think twice about setting aside 2 hours a week for that. We put 8 hours a week into our work relate, or not 8 hours a week, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week at least into our work. Why wouldn't we take 2 hours of that entire week and say, I want to do this for my relationship. I want to sit down and be playful about it, sometimes serious about it, get dreamy about it, get thoughtful about it, work on it. And people then will sometimes say, generally one of them, but I shouldn't have to work on my relationship. My relationship should be good. It should be good by itself. I think, well, that's great. What part of your life runs like that? Your car doesn't run like that. You know, your hobbies don't run like that. Your work, like, why would you expect this most beautiful foundation of your life? How could you expect it to work without investing?
Yeah. If we have time, I want to share an analogy with your listeners.
Please do.
Um, It'll just take a couple minutes, but we're so accustomed to the idea that the honeymoon phase is the pinnacle. And what we're trying to do for the entire, like, you're going to have a whole life after that. That's like this happily ever after. That's a whole lifetime. And we're so used to the idea that the honeymoon is the pinnacle. And everything we're doing is trying to slow this inevitable descent into mediocrity or fighting or something. That's how we're so accustomed to thinking about it. And I think completely different. I believe that a relationship that's 5 years, 10 years, can be better than where it started. It can be better next year than it is this year. It can be better 5 years from now than it is this year. And so I give this analogy where, let's say you cook dinner together a couple times a week. It's that simple. You cook dinner and you share it together, and it's not a big deal. It's not, you just it's something that you like to do. Now, what's going to happen? And I give this example specifically for couples who come in and say their sex life isn't going well. And I say, think of it this way: you're cooking these meals a couple times a week. What's going to happen? Well, first of all, you're going to figure out how each of you can have a delicious meal. You don't have to have the same taste, but you're going to figure out how both of you can have a delicious meal that you don't have to eat anything that you don't like. I don't like Brussels sprouts. My partner loves them. You're going to figure that out. That's the beginning. Then what's going to happen? You're going to figure out who's good at what. I'm really good at the steak. My partner's really good at roasting the asparagus, and you're going to get your flow in the kitchen, and it's going to be like you're going to figure out your different roles, and the meal is going to get better. Then what's going to happen? I just tried this delicious French thing in this restaurant, and I'd love to kind of reverse engineer it and figure out, I think you'll like it too. So you figure out you need better utensils, you need better, and pretty soon after 5 or 10 years, those meals are going to be better than you can get in the restaurant because they're dialed into you. These meals are stellar. They're simple. There wasn't any drama around it. There wasn't any work or efforting. It was just you had this commitment to just cooking a meal and having it be good, and it wasn't a big deal. That's how your love life can be. That's how your relationship can be. That it's just because you're putting in effort and you're collaborating and you're being a team together and just on a daily basis, that all of a sudden you have something that's so precious and so fulfilling and so delicious and so just valuable that there's nothing out there that you would want that compares to what you have at home. So that's how I think of it.
I think it's a beautiful way to look at it, and your analogy is perfect because in that kitchen, whether someone wants more salt or more pepper or try a new dish, that's the part where I think when we try and get back to the dating, which many people want, that's what the flow is in dating. It's let me meet you there. Let's try this. Let me find more. Let me find out that. Let me do this. And when we do that, because we have those skills when we're dating, all we need to do is to keep using them, have those skills become hardwired. And we create that. And I also think using, just a very quick, slightly different analogy, I often tell people our relationships, if you I agree with you. Many people say the honeymoon is the ultimate. Okay, so you're hiking to the top of, a mountain and you think that that is the very best view and you want to stay up there. Well, you've missed a whole lot of the adventure because for me, it's not just about getting to the top. It's about the work of going through this crevasse and that, and then pausing and being on a plateau and looking out, going, oh my goodness, sometimes falling and having to get up, trying to get through this part, running into a waterfall, getting frozen while you're going through. I mean, that's the journey of life. So if we see all parts of it as a mindful adventure, not just the pinnacles, then we
Mhm.
can see that this journey of relationship can be really exquisite. It does take effort, it does take mindfulness, but it is a beautiful journey. So, last piece, going back to our listener's question as we prepare to wind up, this person who's thinking, basically, should I have an affair? Should I go? What, what should I do? As you said, as I said, we can't tell anybody what to do, but a good friendship, if there's any chance for it to be infused with the passion and adventure and zest this person is looking for, we might at least advocate for giving that part of it a try before parting as friends. What would you say?
I 100% agree. And I want to go back to something that you were talking about earlier, that this person is someone you're connected with deeply. And think about what you want, but don't like if it occurs to you as a demand, like this is what I want, are you going to give this to me? Notice that pattern and instead think of it as an invitation. This is how our relationship, I have this vision of how our relationship could be better than it is. Does this inspire you? I'm inviting you to something that could be better than what we have. Is it as inspiring to you as it is to me? Let's co-create something that we're both excited about. At least give it a chance to make that offer and see if they're interested in it. And that should help you. That should tell you a lot.
Ken, you used one of my favorite words. You used it at the beginning, and now here at the end, you're using it again. Invitation. It's so important in our relationships to forego demands and to keep down defensiveness, to encourage openness and connection. Think about making invitations. It's a whole different energy. The energy of an invitation is open and loving and yummy, whereas a demand, you must do this for me or else, that doesn't feel good to anybody, nobody. So, oh my goodness, Ken, this is fabulous. Where can our listeners find you and learn more about your work?
Yeah. So if you want to contact me, you can visit my website at kenblackman.com. Super easy. If you want to learn more about the kinds of things I talk about and have a deeper dive into some of the subjects that we've talked about, I have a blog on Medium, and I'll give you the link so that you can put it in the
In the
in the notes
in the
for
show
my blog.
notes? Yep.
Mhm.
Perfect. So, listeners, again, kenblackman.com, his website, and the link to his blog on Medium will be in the show notes, plus a couple of other links that are related to his work. So, Ken, thank you so much for the beauty and loving energy you bring into the world and the hope. And I so appreciate you. Thank you for sharing your time with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a lovely conversation.
It's been beautiful. Thank you so much. And to our listeners, thank you so much for being with us today. As always, it's such a joy and a pleasure to be with you. And this is Imperfect Love.
Thanks so much for sharing your time with me today. Remember, you have the power to transform your life and love fearlessly, if imperfectly, and it's my privilege to help you along the way. You can find more life-changing content, including my books and other podcast episodes, at drcarlamanley.com. Feel free to submit your own confidential questions through my website. I'll do my very best to include your issue on a future episode. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. Until we connect again, this is Dr. Carla Marie Manley wishing you oceans of blessings and love. Please note, this podcast is psychoeducational in nature and is not intended to replace formal mental health support. Please contact your healthcare provider or emergency hotline if you need psychiatric care. And as always, please take good care of your amazing, wonderful self.